So I have mixed all of the colors in my color scheme. Every single color is mixed, none is straight from the palette. I've swatched it on either a scratch piece of paper or in my sketchbook, so I'm really happy with the colors I have. So when you get started on your project, we suggest that you start with your lightest color first. That way, if you accidentally get that lighter color in the next section, once it dries, you can paint over it and cover it up, okay? When I'm painting, I really like to use a paintbrush with a point that comes to a point when I dip it in water, because that'll help me get in a lot of the smaller detail areas. This is also a pretty soft, pliable brush that actually came with this watercolor set. So when you hold your brush, you can hold it similar to a pen or a pencil, okay? Just like you would to write your name or sign your name. You can also hold it a little bit further back if you're painting large areas and trying to get smooth strokes. So play with that grip. You definitely don't want to hold it like this. You're not going to stab anyone with your paintbrush, hopefully, okay? But I don't know your life. All right, so I'm going to start with my lightest color in my color scheme, which is this yellowish color. So I'm going to dip my brush in some water, and one moment, please. The lights went out.
Okay, if you, by any chance, want to work on this the next day, just leave it out just like this, and it will dry up. And you just add a little bit of water to it, and you can use it again.
Perfect. So what I want to do before I start is think about the design. So just like from the very beginning of the project, where we started thinking about where we want our area of emphasis by where we want to have our lines intersect and where we want to have our letters, I want to think about the design before I start painting. So I think with these colors, I want to have the warm colors as my area of emphasis. So I'm going to concentrate a lot of my warmer colors in this section and then probably start to blend out into some of the cooler colors. So when I start painting, I like to use the point of the brush, lead with the point of the brush, and drag the paint behind it. Okay. Right now I'm working on a dry surface, and I'm trying to create a flat area of color, which is called a wash. Pay close attention to the amount of water that I'm using on my brush. I don't have like Niagara Falls or like a Great Lake Lanier on my section, okay? I also can't see my brush strokes. You can tell that you don't have enough water on your brush if when you paint with it, you get, I can't even do it. Let me try a dry brush just to show you guys. Okay. There you go. That's what I see a lot of students doing. The solution to that is just get some more water on your brush, okay? The other great thing about watercolor is that you can also rehydrate very gently things that are on the page. You never want to scrub the page because eventually watercolor paper will start to ball up and tear, but yeah, all that mess that I just made, just fixed, just with water, all right? So let's go back to working on my project, okay? Since I already had this yellow warm color on my brush, I wanna keep using it, okay? But I wanna start thinking about color value. So I wanna make this little section really, really intense with pigment. So I'm not using as much water. I'm still leading with the point of my brush, going around the edges first, okay, to fill in that section. Now I'm just gonna let it dry there, okay? If I wanna make a lighter section, I'll just take my brush that was already dipped in that color, dip it in water, and use the watered down version, which will create a tint because some of the white of the paper shows through.
And you're not painting right next to the area that was just wet. You're painting diagonal.
Right. What happens if I were to paint next to an area that's wet? Right here in my color swatch, I have this black. If I were to take a yellow and I were to paint up right up next to it, you can see what immediately started to happen. The water bled into the next section. So that's another reason why we suggest to start with a single color. Also, you notice that the sections I'm painting in are the shapes that are created by the overlapping lines and overlapping letters. Every single shape created by an overlap, whether it's a larger area over here or a teeny tiny little area here, needs to be filled in with a color from your color scheme, okay? You can also be a little playful and you can mix some of the colors in your color scheme to get different ones. When you're mixing colors, you need to mix colors that are analogous to each other. So since these colors are very similar to yellow, orange, and red, kind of purple, they're next to each other on the color wheel. So those would be good ones to mix with each other, okay? It wouldn't be as good to mix this pinky orange with that blue because they're really, really distant cousins. They're really far apart. And remember what we talked about mixing complementary colors? It turns neutral or like a poo-poo brown. And I'm trying not to get any poo-poo brown on my paper. So if I wanted to mix, I could just go up here in my palette, take a little bit from the analogous neighbor, mix a little bit in my palette, and then, where do I want to do this? Do this section. So you notice that I'm always painting an entire section at one time. I'm not stopping in the middle. If I were to stop right now, this would dry. Then when I went back to work with it, I would always see that line of where I stopped painting. So I'm always trying to keep the section I'm painting wet while I'm working so that it dries into a smooth wash.